Good morning to Sarasota Mod. I'm Janet Minker, the chair of the Sarasota Architectural Foundation, and this is the third annual Sarasota Mod Mid-Century Modern Weekend Festival. And that's all I'm going to say this morning. I'm going to turn it over to fellow board member Christopher Wilson, and here we go.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. My name is Christopher Wilson. A lot of you know me in the audience. I am on the board of the SAF, but my real job is I work here at Ringling College. And I'm here to thank Ringling College of Art and Design, my employer, for providing us with these lovely facilities, and especially the Sarasota Museum of Art, which is a division of Ringling College, and that is our co-sponsor for the whole Sarasota Mod event. In addition to, you've probably seen our other various sponsors for the various events. But lastly, I want to thank all of you for supporting our mid-century modern heritage here in Sarasota, because if it weren't for you, the city and other people would be tearing down more of these things. And thanks to all of our interest and desire to keep it going, it's still around, and that's what we're here for, is to celebrate it. So thank you also, and pat yourself on the back. We're going to start it off. Our MC for today is Harold Bugle. He is the real estate editor and architecture writer for our local newspaper, the Sarasota Herald Tribune.
Thank you, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Welcome to Sarasota Mod Weekend #3, inspired by Palm Springs Modernism Week. So maybe someday in the future we'll grow up to 7 days, but 3 days right now. We're going to have a great time this weekend. I arrived in Sarasota on Thanksgiving Day, 1958, which of course was a Thursday. I arrived by train, and everybody remembers train travel. Not everybody. Rarely you don't remember it wherever you are, but we arrived at the east end of Main Street in the old Atlantic Coastline Terminal. Does anybody remember that? A few people remember that. And then we went directly to my uncle's house on Waldemere Street, and the next building I went into after that was the following Monday. We got in the car, it was a school day, and our uncle, my sister and my cousins and I were driven to school by my uncle. And the first building I went to in Sarasota was the Alta Vista Elementary School addition by Victor Lundy. So I got an indoctrination into mid-century modern architecture at a very early age, and I grew up with it. So it's when I started writing about architecture in the year 2000, I was like coming home to my language. It was all very familiar to me, and to learn about how it was all developed at that time was really exciting. So Victor is one of the first people I interviewed back then, and I wrote a column back then called The Artist Architect, and learned about his wonderful art skills in addition to his architectural artistry. So it's a real honor to have Victor here and being honored, being the star of this weekend. I would like to thank our sponsors, and they are many and very important. Oh, by the way, speaking of valets, I have a claim check here. So if you're missing your claim check number 3678, you can probably tell by the number, right? You win a prize if you get a car. So if this is your ticket, if you can name the architect who designed Florida Southern College, Frank Lloyd Wright. Okay, this is your ticket. Go come get your car. So just check your pockets and make sure you have your valet parking. And I'm going to leave it up here on the table so that you can come up and get it by yourself and be totally embarrassed as to getting it up in front of everybody. I hope you don't mind me wearing my hat in today, because my forehead had a confrontation with the dermatologist the other day, and the dermatologist won. So I thought I'd cover all that up, so if you don't mind. Our sponsors, diamond sponsors, Coulter. They're building the View condominium. Ellen Hansen Designs, the Gulf Coast Community Foundation, Carrie and Ken Cox, who have one of the most beautiful properties in the region, if not the state. Bob and Ann Essner, the heroes who saved the Umbrella House. Baird Wealth Advisors, Lisa Russo. Latitude 27 Properties, PNC Wealth Management. Marty Lieberman, who did so much to promote Sarasota architecture over the years and kind of invented the first festival here in 2001, the American Legacy Tour. RGB Architects, Home Resource, the Gardner Foundation, Charlotte and Charles Perret, Sarasota Museum of Art, Herman Miller, Knoll, the City of Sarasota, Sarasota County, the Art Center Sarasota, Friends of the Sarasota County History Center, the Walker Guest House replica partner, The Ringling, Tableside, Innovative Dining, Sarasota Magazine, Sarasota Braden International Airport, Visit Sarasota County, Marianne and Jim Armour, Nancy's Barbecue, and Kona Ice. And I think Kona Ice is in the building because it's been really cold in here this morning. So, but we have more people, and each one of you is worth 200 BTUs of heat. So let's get on with the program. Thank you to the sponsors. First up is the documentary Sculptor of Space, which is going to be introduced to you by Joan Brierton. Joan is a fabulous senior preservation specialist with the U.S. General Services Administration, the Center for Historic Buildings there. She serves as agency liaison to the National Trust for Historic Preservation, the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation. She's a compliance expert and is responsible for oversight of Section 106 review for GSA restoration, redevelopment, and new construction projects nationwide. In other words, she is the federal government's landlord. But she tells me that, I had an interview with her last night, the White House has its own special district that is exempt from Section 106, is that right, Joan? Am I getting that right? So if you see a big gold T in neon lights go up on top of the White House, she has no responsibility for that. So Joan, come on up and introduce this wonderful film you produced. Joan Brierton.
And thanks to Janet and to all the sponsors, to the Art Center, to the Lundy family for an extraordinary night last night. Let's give it up for a fabulous start to this weekend. We're going to let the film speak for itself and to further your understanding of the art and architecture of Victor Lundy. What I'll do now, though, is I will take a few moments to give you the background, because how does a federal agency end up documenting the life and legacy of a mid-century modern master? I'll tell you the story. So GSA, the General Services Administration, is the federal government's landlord. We have millions and millions of square footage of federal space throughout the country. Probably over 8,000 buildings. We have 500 historic buildings in our inventory. We work within the Center for Historic Buildings, and we manage our historic building inventory from the late 19th century all the way through the buildings we now consider historic from the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s. As stewards of those properties, about a little over 15 years ago, GSA began looking at its inventory as a whole. More than 35% of that inventory was built during the 50s, 60s, and 70s. I'm going to take a moment now to call out my former supervisor, Rolando Rivas Camp. Rolando, if you would raise your hand or stand so folks know who you are. Because think about it, it's the mid-1990s, and GSA is saying we need to look at our buildings from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. You all know here that people look at you today saying, really? Why? Try doing that in the 1990s, but Rolando, with his very progressive vision and leadership within the agency, really started a movement within the agency that said, hey, listen, This is 35% of our inventory. We have to understand it so we can best guide reinvestment decisions. And so during that, so Rolando, thank you. During that time, GSA said, we want to do a historic structures report on the United States Tax Court. And that began, I think, around 1998, our first communication with Victor Lundy on the United States Tax Court. Move 15 years forward, and GSA is now recognized as a leader in federal modern era preservation. Before we undertook the modern era, we can also claim that for our traditional building stock, I'm very proud to say. But for the last 15 years, we have been focused on not only the monumental masterpieces in our inventory, like Victor's Tax Court, but others across the country, from small scale to large scale, from courthouses to federal office buildings and post offices, you name it. Our program is called Growth, Efficiency, and Modernism, and it's all available. All the materials we have available on our program are available to you, to the public, free of charge through our website. And this is one example, also under Rolando's leadership, of the poster series we developed for our modern building era. This is the United States Tax Court building, which Janet, I think, will have available after the program to everyone. Free in the lobby. Hopefully we have the brochures there as well. But 15 years later, we said, we did the historic structures report on the United States Tax Court. Now we need to designate it. Now we need to make it a national landmark. And I'm very proud to say that in 2008, it was one of the first modern era buildings that GSA was to designate. And so Victor's Tax Court in DC is now a national landmark. A very progressive move for the federal government and for the city. Part of our program, part of our stewardship program also involves a film series. Traditionally, they were focused on traditional building stock. And what the films were intended to do was to document reinvestment. So when we were going to do a major modernization of a federal building, federal historic building, we would document it from beginning to end. So you could chart the public investment, the dollars, from the before to the after. Then we take that information, those films, and we make it available to the public. We completed our designation of the tax court and went to Rolando and said, we think we should do a film on the tax court. Now I know that breaks with tradition in many ways because we weren't doing a modernization of the building. The building is in great shape. But we knew we had this masterpiece in our inventory. So we began to do a film on an individual building. When we went to Houston, when we met with Victor, when we were introduced and exposed to the inventory and the entire body of work, we came back to Rolando and said, we need to break with tradition again and seek your support for a documentary on this individual, his life, his work, his legacy, to start to tell really what was a story that hadn't been told, a page that had yet to be written in American architectural mid-century history. And Rolando supported us and pursued support from the larger agency administration. Now I'll tell you, it took us a long time. We started a long time ago. 2006, 2007, we didn't have our premiere until 2013 at the National Building Museum, and I'll tell you why, and it's an important part of the story. This isn't our primary mission, to make films. We are stewards of our historic building stock, as Harold said, my primary responsibility is compliance work and making sure that we do projects that are in compliance with federal regulation, federal preservation regulation. So we had to do and manage our primary responsibilities first, and in between and when we could get back to the film. And Victor was so patient throughout. And you would say to me many times, "Do you really think this is going to happen?" And I would say, "Yes, it's going to happen. Bear with us. We'll see it through." And we did. It wasn't just me, however, and it wasn't just Rolando, it was a team. Sarah Garner, Diane Park. There was a production team at that point within our agency. We don't have that anymore within our agency. This may be one of the last films we have done. So if we had to close out with a film, I'm glad and I'm proud that it's this one and to document your work. Couple of quick points to make before we move on to the film. When we started the film, when we started this pursuit, it was a professional pursuit. And we went after an architectural story. And what you'll see, we got the most truest form of an American story. From an immigration, to war, to innovation, to education. We thought we were going to start off and tell the story about the federal legacy and the federal pursuit of excellence in architecture, and we captured so much more in the story. And to the point about war, and you will hear in the film, Victor recount his personal experience of war. But Victor, as you may have thought this morning, today is November 12th. 72 years ago today is the day Victor was wounded in World War II, earning him the Purple Heart. We are here. And he'll walk you through that experience, which is very powerful. But we're here on Veterans Day weekend to honor your architecture, but we're also so very proud to honor your service. And thank you, Victor, for sharing your story and allowing GSA to tell your story. Enjoy.